Welcome to our tutorial on how to reconcile the Form 941 Box 2. In this tutorial, you will learn how Sage BusinessWorks calculates the amounts that appear in the Box 2 of your Form 941, why there may be discrepancies and what type of errors can cause the discrepancies. We'll talk about how to troubleshoot these discrepancies, how you can correct them, and future measures that you can take to ensure the numbers in your Sage BusinessWorks are correct. The Box 2 amounts are calculated using the formula that you see on the screen. It takes the quarter-to-date gross pay, adds in any cash or charge tips, then adds in any company-paid taxable deductions that are subject to FWT. It then subtracts out any employee pre-tax deductions and adds in any other pays that are set taxable for FWT but not added to gross. As a tip, using the calculation on this screen, the calculated number will be the correct amount of FWT taxable wages that should appear in Box 2. Some of the things that can cause discrepancies on the Box 2 figures can be an employee was mistakenly defined as an ag employee. Ag employee wages are reported on the Form 943 and will not be included in the Box 2 Form 941. Possibly a pre-tax deduction was removed from a time card in manual payroll calculation. Using manual payroll calculation to remove pre-tax deductions from a calculated time card will cause discrepancies if the taxable wages were not manually updated. An other pay was not selected, add to gross. If the other pay was not selected, add to gross, the amount is not included in the gross wages for the calculation. In Sage BusinessWorks, we can use the company total reports by check for specific dates or quarter specific to get these numbers. The numbers on the company totals report are calculated from the actual check detail. You can calculate the deductions by printing the deduction period activity report. Use the other pay period activity report for the quarter to calculate the other pays that are not added to gross. The deduction and other pay report can be filtered to return only the information desired for your calculation. Then you can add and subtract the deductions and other pays as described in our calculations. To make your reconciliation easier, you can customize these reports and some exports that will assist in your calculations and troubleshooting. You can then use these reports every quarter when reconciling your Form 941 Box 2. Let's start by creating the reports and templates for our export. Our first report will be the Period Activity Deductions Report that will return all the company paid deductions that are FWT taxable to our employee. To do this, we select Payroll, Reports, Deduction Reports, Period Activity. For the report, we'll click on the lookup and we want to select the Deduction Activity Summary by Deduction ID. We now need to add two filters. So we click on the Filters button. Our first filter is coming from the Payroll Deduction table. So we click on the drop-down arrow and scroll down to the PR Deduction table. In the brackets on the left is the table, to the right is the field in that table. We want the PR Deduction table field range. For the operator, we select greater than, and for the value, we enter the number 1. By adding this filter, only deductions that are set as company paid deductions will be returned. Let's add a second filter. The second filter will also come from the PR Deduction table, and the field is taxable FWT. For the operator, we select equals, and for the value, we select true. By adding this filter, only deductions that are selected as FWT taxable will be returned. Our filtered report is now asking to return only company paid deductions that are set as taxable for FWT. This means your deduction is selected as company individual or company system and has a check mark in the FWT taxable box. We're now going to save this report and give it a unique report name. I'm going to call mine Company Paid FWT Taxable Deductions. By saving this report, it makes it available for future reconciliations. Our next report will also be a period activity deductions report. However, this report is going to return all of the pre-tax employee paid deductions. We select Payroll, Reports, Deduction Reports, Period Activity. We again select our deduction activity summary by deduction ID. We want to add two filters. Our first filter will come from the payroll deduction table again, and it will be the PR deduction range. For the operator, this time it will be less than. And then for the value, we enter the number 2. By adding this filter, it will select only deductions that are set as individual or individual system. The second filter is going to be the payroll deduction. Is it taxable for FWT? We scroll down, find the PR deduction table, and find our Is Taxable FWT. For the operator, we select Equals, and for the value, we select False. By adding this filter, it will return only those deductions that are not subject to FWT tax. Our filtered report is now asking to return only employee paid deductions that are set as non-taxable for FWT. This means your deduction is selected as individual or individual system, and there is no check mark in the FWT taxable box. We're going to save our report for future reconciliations and give it a unique name. I'm going to call mine Employee Pre-Tax Deductions. The last report we're going to customize will be the period activity for our other pays. This will give us the other pays that have been selected as taxable for federal income tax but not added to gross. We select Payroll, Reports, Other Pay Reports, Period Activity. We're going to select the Other Pay Summary by Other Pay ID. We're going to select the Filters button and add two filters. The first field we select will be from the Payroll Other Pay table. So we select the drop-down arrow, find our Other Pay table, and the field we're looking for will be Is Taxable FWT. For the operator, we select Equals, and for the value, we select T. By adding this filter, it will select only the other pays that you have selected as taxable for FWT. Let's add our second filter. Our second filter will again come from the Payroll Other Pay, so we find our PR Other Pay table, and we're looking for the field called Tax Category. For the operation, we select Equals, and for the value, we select 0. By adding this filter, only other pays that have not been selected as Add to Gross will be returned. Our filtered report is now asking to return only other pays that are set as taxable for FWT but not added to gross. This means your other pay is checked for FWT taxable and the Add to Gross box is unchecked. I'm now going to save my report for future reconciliations and give it a unique report name. I'm going to call mine FWT Not Add to Gross. We have our 3 reports. We're now ready to create our export templates. The first export template we are creating is to locate any employees that may have been mistakenly selected as an agricultural employee. We select Payroll, Transfer, Custom Exports. we select the New button to create a new template. I'm going to call my template Ag Employees. When we select Next, it's going to ask us to select our data source. I'm going to click on the drop-down arrow and select the PR Employees. We say Next. The fields I want to select are only two fields. I want to select the PR Employee ID, and then I'm going to scroll down and find the PR Employee and a field called Is Ag Employee. I've added my two fields. I'm going to say Next. There's no need to set a sort for this export. We say Next, and I do want to set a filter. The filter is going to be on the PR Employee Is Ag Employee field. The operation will be equals, and the value will be equal to 1. By adding this filter, the export is going to return only employees who have been set as a kind of payer as agriculture in the maintain employees. We select Done, and now we've created our template to search for ag employees. Now let's create our second template. This one is going to be to locate any payroll checks that may have been manually calculated. We're going to select New, and I'm going to give my template name Manually Calculated Checks. We'll say Next. For the data source, I'm going to use the PR check distribution and say Next. We're going to add a few fields here. The first field we're going to use is from the PR employee table, their ID. And then we want to see their name, so it'd be the PR employee name. The next field is coming from the payroll check table. So we're going to scroll down. Everything left in the brackets is the table. On the right is the field name within that table. So here's our PR paycheck. We're going to select the status field. Also, from the PR paycheck table, we're going to select the following fields: the check date, the gross pay, the FWT taxable pay, the OASDI taxable pay, the Medicare taxable pay, and I'm going to scroll down and select the cash tips and the charge tips. We're going to say Next. Now we are going to set a sort on this export because we'd like to sort it by the status, the paycheck status. This will help us to identify a little bit easier those that have a status of being manually calculated. We're going to say Next, and we're going to add a filter for the PR paycheck again, but this time it will be for the check dates. So we're going to come down to the PR paycheck table, find the check date field, and the operation will be between. And I'm going to put a value in here right now for my second quarter. So my second quarter starts on April 1 and ends June 30th. When reconciling each quarter, you will need to remember to change the values for your filtered check dates. I'm going to add a second filter to exclude voided checks. From the field names, we're going to scroll down again to the PR paycheck table and find the void date. For the operation, we'll select the less than sign, and we're going to enter a date of 01/01/00. By adding this filter, it will filter out any checks that have been voided. I'm going to say Done, and we've now created our two export templates. Now that we have our three reports and our two templates, we're ready to start reconciling. As a refresher, there are three reasons why the amount that appears in the box 2 of your 941 may not agree with the check detail on your company totals report. Either an employee has been defined as an ag employee, a pre-tax deduction was removed from a time card in manual payroll calculation, or an other pay was set up as taxable but not selected add to gross. I am going to show you 3 different reconciliations, and we're going to use our reports and export templates that we just saved, and you're going to see how they will be beneficial in your future reconciliations. I have previewed my 941 for the second quarter. My box 2 wages is showing $52,792.75. I want to calculate and make sure that the amount that appears in this box 2 is correct. As a refresher, the box 2 amounts are calculated by Sage BusinessWorks using the formula that you see below. That's the reason we created our saved reports and our 2 custom exports. The calculated number is going to be the correct amount that should appear on the FWT taxable wages in box 2 of your 941. To perform my calculations, I'm first going to bring up my company totals report by check for the quarter I'm reconciling. I select Payroll, Reports, Company Totals Report. I'm reconciling my second quarter, and I'm going to preview this to the screen. The formula to calculate the box 2 says we take our gross wages of $55,685.45 and add any cash or charged tips. We have no tips, so the gross wages is $55,685.45. The next thing we do is we add in any company paid taxable deductions. So we're going to go to our reports, deduction reports, period activity. We're going to select our company paid FWT taxable deductions report that we created earlier. We're going to select the quarter that we're reconciling. For me, that's the second quarter. When I select preview, I can see that no results have been returned. The next report will be the employee pre-tax deductions. So we take the gross plus cash and charge tips plus any company paid FWT taxable deductions less any employee pre-tax deductions. We'll select the quarter. For me, that's the second quarter, and preview to the screen. For this quarter, we had $199.70 in a 401k employee pre-tax deductions. The last report will be our payroll, reports, other pay reports, period activity. We now have to add in any other pays that were FWT taxable but not added to gross. We're going to go ahead and select our second quarter. I select preview, and no results have been returned. So let's take a look at our calculated amount and see how it compares to the number that appears in the box 2 of our 941. When we look at the calculated total, it shows $55,485.75. But the box 2 on our form 941 is much lower at $52,877.75. So why the discrepancy? Let's start doing some troubleshooting. We created 2 exports to help us troubleshoot our discrepancies. I like to first check for ag employees. It's a very common mistake that can be easily fixed. We go to Payroll, Transfer, Custom Exports. We've already created our template. We just need to click Export. If any information is returned to Excel, it means we have an employee that's been set as an agricultural employee. In this example, I mistakenly set my employee Jones as an agricultural employee. To correct, we select Payroll, Employees, Maintain Employees. We bring up our employee Jones, and we select the Status button. On the left, you'll see the kind of payer. My employee has been set mistakenly to agriculture. I'm going to click on the drop-down arrow and set Jones as a regular employee. Say OK and save. I'm going to generate my 941 again and get my new numbers. My 941 box 2 now has the correct figures. In our next example, we're going to look at how removing a pre-tax deduction in manual payroll calculation can cause discrepancies. I've calculated a bonus check for my employee for $2,000, and there was a pre-tax deduction included on the time card at the time of the calculation. I then went into manual payroll calculation and removed the pre-tax deduction, but I did not change the taxable wages. Let's take a look at how this can cause discrepancies in your box 2. I've previewed my 941 for my third quarter. The box 2 wages is showing $2,000. We first calculate from our company totals report the gross pay plus any cash or charge tips. On this company totals report, we have $2,000 in gross pay and no tips. We then use our reports to do the rest of the calculation. We select our deduction report for period activity. We first select the company paid FWT taxable deductions report that we saved previously. We select the quarter that we're reconciling. For me, it's the third quarter. I preview it to the screen. No information was returned. The second report will be my employee pre-tax deductions. I do this for the same quarter that I'm reconciling, which for me is the third quarter, and absolutely no information was returned. My last check is going to be my other pays. So I'm going to go to my reports, other pay reports, period activity, and I select my FWT taxable not add to gross report that I've saved and select the quarter that I'm reconciling, and I preview to the screen and no information is returned. When I did my calculation, it calculated $2,000, which is exactly what's in box 2 of my 941. But why do I still have $1,900 for my FWT taxable pay? Well, this is where we need to do a little bit more troubleshooting. Using the exports that we created, we'll go to Transfer, Custom Exports. As I mentioned previously, I first like to check for any ag employees. I'm going to select the Export button. No records were found, which means I don't have any employees that I mistakenly selected as an ag employee. Next, we're going to check to see if possibly there's a manually calculated check out there and maybe I made a mistake and removed a pre-tax deduction and forgot to change the taxable wages. I do need to go into the edit and make sure the dates are within my quarter that I'm reconciling. So I'm doing the third quarter. I need July through September. Before I export the information, let's talk about the status and what we're looking for. We're looking to see if any of the 4 statuses that you see on this screen appear when we export the check detail. The status of 4 means that that was a manually calculated, printed, and posted check. A status of 5 was manually calculated, printed, and posted as a hand check. A 260 means it was manually calculated direct deposit check, and the 1284 was also a manually calculated direct deposit check that's been transmitted. So with this information, we're going to go ahead and select Export and see if we can get a status of a 4, 5, 260, or 1284. When the information is returned into Excel, I'm going to look at the column for status. I do see that I do have a manually calculated status 4, and I show the gross pay was $2,000, but here's the FWT taxable pay of $1,900. What happened on this check is it was a bonus check. There was a $100 pre-tax deduction when I automatically calculated that time card. So I went into manual payroll calculation and removed the $100 pre-tax deduction, but I did not change the taxable pay. We've now found our mistake between the box 2 and what shows on our company totals report of the FWT taxable pay. To correct the check detail on your company totals report, if you have not yet closed your quarter and the employee will have another payroll check processed in the current quarter, you can correct the taxable pay in manual payroll calculation on the next payroll. If you have not yet closed the quarter and the employee has no further payroll checks in the quarter, you could void the incorrect check and then correct the taxable wages and post it as a hand check. If you've already closed the quarter, you'll have to manually correct the amount in the box 2 of the 941 in your enhanced tax reporting. In our last example, I have calculated a bonus check for my employee for $2,000 using an other pay that was created for my bonus. I selected the taxable boxes, but I forgot to select the Add to Gross checkbox. Let's see how this affects our reconciliation. I'm looking at my 941 for the third quarter, and my box 2 wages are showing $2,000. Let's now do the calculation to see if the box 2 wages are correct. We first bring up the company totals report by check. For the quarter we're reconciling, that's my third quarter, and we preview it to the screen. We take our gross wages plus the charged and cash tips. In this example, there is no gross pay. As I mentioned previously, these are very basic examples that I'm showing you, but I think it makes it easy to understand. So the total of our gross wages and our cash and charged tips is 0. Next, we do our deductions period activity reports. We'll bring up our deductions report period activity, and we run the company paid FWT taxable deductions. Select our quarter we're reconciling, and we preview to the screen. And I have no information returned. I do my second deductions period activity report for my employee pre-tax deductions. I select the quarter I'm reconciling and preview. And I have no employee pre-tax deductions as well. So far, our total is 0. I now go to my other pay reports for the period activity, and I select my saved report for the FWT taxable not added to gross report. I select the quarter that I'm reconciling, third quarter for me, and I preview to the screen. And I can see that I have a $2,000 other pay that was set up as being taxable to my employee, but I forgot to add to gross. When we compare the numbers in the box 2 of the 941 to our FWT taxable pay on the company totals report, the two numbers agree. Where we have the discrepancy is in the gross pay. This may not be affecting your 941 calculations, but it can affect some of your other reports. Let's recap how you can make your corrections. If the employee was mistakenly selected as an agricultural employee, correct the type of employee in Maintain Employees. If a calculated time card was changed in manual calculation, if the quarter is still open and your employee will have another payroll check processed within the current quarter, you can correct the taxable pay in manual payroll calculation on that next payroll check. If the employee does not have another payroll check within the current quarter and you have not yet closed the quarter, you could void the incorrect check and then correct the taxable wages. If you've already closed your quarter, you'll have to manually correct the amount in the box 2 of the 941. If an other pay was not selected Add to Gross, your box 2 form 941 will be correct. However, other tax reports may be affected. To correct for subsequent quarterly reports, a new other pay will need to be created with the Add to Gross box checked. You can search our Sage knowledge base at sagekb.com for how to correct an other pay that was set up to not be added to gross and should be. Some important tips to ensure the reports in Sage BusinessWorks are consistent with your federal tax forms. It's important that you make corrections prior to closing the quarter and especially the year. An other pay that has been selected as FWT taxable should also be selected as add to gross. This will ensure the 941 and W-2 reports are correct. Some future measures that you can take to ensure the numbers in your Sage BusinessWorks are correct. Create and run the custom export to make sure you have not selected any employees as an ag employee by mistake. It happens. When you're using the manual payroll calculation, if deductions or other pays are removed, make sure to check if the taxable pay also needs to be manually corrected. When in manual payroll calculation and you're on the deductions other pays, if you remove that check mark, so we see the before and then we see the changed, it's important that you also change the taxable pay. So we see before the taxable pay was $1,900 and we need to change it to $2,000. Whenever you make changes in manual payroll calculation, you must manually change every field. BusinessWorks will not automatically calculate any taxable pays when you manually change anything on that calculated time card. Check your deductions to make sure the taxable status of your deductions are set correctly. Verify any of your other pays that have been set up as taxable for FWT also have a check mark in the Add to Gross box. Thank you for joining us on this tutorial on how to reconcile your Box 2 of the Form 941.